Hello and welcome to Her Land O'Clock podcast, a podcast where we get to capture experiences, practices and lessons on land. On this particular episode, it is brought to you by the Stand for Her Land campaign, a campaign whose core mission is to advance women land rights by closing that gap that is there between law and practice. One of the core advocacy priority issues of this campaign is on social norms transformation, looking at how can we transform from those harmful and discriminatory norms and practices that prevent women from enjoying their full bundle of rights on land. Today, we shall be capturing and learning some of the culturally acceptable norms and practices in Buganda Kingdom. And I do have the honor to host on this episode of Her Land O'Clock the Prime Minister of Buganda Kingdom, popularly known as the Katikiro, Owek Charles Peter Mayiga. Welcome to Her Land O'Clock podcast. But who am I to introduce the second most powerful man in Buganda Kingdom? Allow me to give him the honor to introduce himself. I know he wears very many hats. He's the Katikiro, like I've mentioned, the second most powerful person in the Buganda Kingdom. He's a father, he's a husband, he's an author, he's also a lawyer. Owek Charles Peter Mayiga, you're welcome to Her Land O'Clock podcast.
Thank you very much. I think you have ably introduced me.
But you can also expand on your role in Buganda Kingdom. I'm sure you also have a way you would love to be known by the people.
Well, how would I like to be known? I'm a very ordinary person, except for those who have not met me. I'm just like any other person you meet across the street. But of course, a public office imposes certain restrictions. But I'm a person who enjoys how should I put it? I'm a free-spirited person. I enjoy music very much.
What kind of music?
All sorts of music. You'll be surprised that I know about the trending music for the young people and music for the older folks like myself. And if I come across drummers and they're doing a good job, I will enjoy it very much. Chiganda music, I will enjoy that very much. You'll find me enjoying Kadonkam music by Fred Sevata. And at the same time, you'll find me enjoying Zafaran's music or Vinca or Spice Diana or Palazzo. I'm like that. I think as far as music is concerned, I'm an all-rounder. I love reading. It's one of the things that gives me a lot of peace and freedom when I'm reading something interesting. And I also write. I've written 5 books. And one of them has been actually translated from English into Uganda. My first book, King on the Throne. And I enjoy sports. I support SC Villa, we are the champions. I support Voodoo FC, that is the Masaza Cup.
Because you're from Masaka?
Yes, of course, and we are the champions. I support Arsenal.
Ooh, this podcast is getting
we are struggling to win a trophy after so many years. Of course, I support the Uganda Cranes. I'm happy we're going for AFCON. Yeah, that's the summary about me that people may not know about.
I think what you people should also get to know that as I'm interviewing the Katikiro, casually, I'm also his wife. I informed him earlier that from where I come from the Toro Kingdom, I'm from the Mbogo clan, that is my totem. So in Buganda, basically, I would be of the Mbogo, and his wife is from the Mbogo clan, and him is from the Mutima. So I feel so comfortable being here.
You haven't added that after the interview, I'm taking you to introduce you to your elder sister, my wife.
Guys, I'm going to Buganda Kingdom officially, but we have been honored to be hosted at his office here at Bulange Mengo. Bulange Mengo is the administrative, I should say, headquarters of Buganda Kingdom, and the king himself also actually has an office here. Owek, let's get into the discussion of today as we talk about how land is governed in Buganda Kingdom, as we speak about the culturally acceptable norms and practices in Buganda Kingdom when it comes to access, use and control of land, and also shall explore what culturally is acceptable when it comes to inheritance and divorce. But let me start with the basics. What does land mean to you as a person?
Well, land is a factor of production. That's what we learned in economics many years back. It's a factor of production. It is very important. And in an agrarian society like Uganda is, because 70% of our people in Uganda, they survive on land. They do farming or cattle keeping. That makes it even more important. And in Buganda, because of the clan system, every clan has what we call an original home, Obutaka. And this is somewhere, located on land somewhere. Of the Mutima clan, like you said, and Obutaka Wafi, our original ancestral home is in Bali, at the lake shores, Lake Narubale, which some people want to call Victoria. And it makes it more significant because land has cultural connotations. The members of Mbogo clan come from Muguru, that is in Singo, Mitiana if you want. And that's their original ancestral home. That's where they originate from. So it plays all these roles, land, in the Uganda context. But also because that's how we live our lives. People grow food or even cash crops on land. So it is, I think, one of the most profound factors of production.
So you've answered even the question of how land is viewed from the Uganda perspective.
Yes.
It is Obutaka, it is home.
Yeah, and you'll find when I talked about the original ancestral home, that's Obutaka, but that is for the clan headship. But then there are sub-layers in every clan in Buganda, what we call Amasiga. Below Amasiga you find a Mituba, a Niriri. All these have original ancestral homes. So the entire fabric of the people in Buganda are essentially characterized by the clans to which they belong. And these clans have the headship Obutaka, and then you get the other layers below the Obutaka of Amasiga and Mitube and Nyiriri, which also have original ancestral homes. So that shows you how significant land is from a purely cultural perspective and as far as the clan system is concerned. So it's a very significant subject.
So that means for one to own land in Uganda, it's through the clan?
Not necessarily.
So how is land owned in Uganda?
Well, apart from clan land, there is also land belonging to the kingdom in general terms. For example, where we are, Bulange, the certificate of title for this installation reads Kabaka of Buganda, because the Kabaka is the corporation soul. The legal person of the kingdom is the Kabaka. So, which means that is land belonging to the kingdom of Buganda, generally speaking. Then you'll find different areas like Sasa headquarters. There is also land owned by the Kabaka, the sitting Kabaka. There is land owned by the different Masazas. But there is also land which is privately owned. You see, under the 1900 agreement, 1,000 square miles were registered in names of private individuals. So this is the land that has been changing hands. There is also public land if you want. We've got the 9,000 square miles which we are struggling to get from government. It is spread all over the districts in Uganda. So it takes various forms. And as far as the law is concerned, we've got 4 categories of ownership of land. Customary land, customarily owned. You may be occupying land which has never been registered and you've been there for since the beginning of time, as it were. Then you've got mile land, the land which is acquired through the mile land system that was introduced in the 1900 agreement.
Which is largely here in Uganda. Largely
here in Uganda, but also parts of Toro.
Yes.
And Bunyoro, I think. Then you have the freehold titles. Normally, government installations were issued with freehold titles. And then you have leasehold. you can have leasehold, whereby if I have a Maido land, I can issue a certificate of title, a lease certificate of title. The Kabaka issues leaseholds to different people. So those are the 4 different forms of land ownership in Uganda, the land tenure systems. Yeah.
So let's get into the norms and practices. What are some of the norms and practices that govern the land administration system here in the Buganda Kingdom? And what does it look like for women when it comes to, accessing, using, and controlling this land? Who makes decisions over this land?
Well, first and foremost, if a woman works hard and she's got money to buy land, she can buy land from anyone, anywhere. For as long as the one who sells her the land owns that land. It could be registered land, freehold or Maido land or leasehold. It could be customary land, what they call a chibanja. A woman is not prohibited from owning land if she buys it with her own resources. Secondly, a woman can inherit land from her parents. I am free to give land to my daughters. And there is no cultural prohibition that bars me from giving my daughter land in this kingdom. And then a woman can get land from her husband. I can give my land to my wife, who definitely belongs to a different clan. There is no prohibition, except if this is the ancestral burial ground. That's a bit tricky, because normally in Buganda, we follow the clan system when we are burying our loved ones. You got a sort of a clan burial ground. It is not common to find a member of Mutima clan buried on land belonging to Mbogo clan. We follow that patriarchal clan system when it comes to burials. So if you're going to give this land to someone who doesn't belong to that clan, you're going to create some problem. So, especially wives, because a wife will be different, of a different clan from that of the husband. The husband can give her land, but he must be careful as he does so, because if it is burial grounds, it can be very tricky, because members of the clan are going to frown upon that kind of gift, because it's like you're taking the land from this particular clan X, and you're giving to clan Y, and that isn't viewed kindly. But if it is not burial ground, for example, or if it is not clan land, when we started this interview, I talked about the original ancestral homes and the other layers of the clan system, which also have original ancestral homes. That land should be in the hands of that particular clan. But outside those barriers, I think a woman can own and hold land.
So if the daughter is of that particular clan, she can take control of that ancestral home, or it has to be strictly a man?
No, she can take it. Although the tendency is that when men are giving out land, most of the time, if fathers are giving out land, they will consider their sons more than their daughters.
Why?
Because my daughter is going to get married outside my clan. She's going to go to another clan. And where she goes, if the husband is a fair man, if she's got, should I say good marriage? Because when the marriage is good and smooth, things are always peaceful. The husband is likely to give her land of her own. In that sense, my daughter may receive land from two ends, from me and from her husband, who will be of a different clan. In that sense, she's receiving land from two ends. And the fathers tend to give the sons more land because, well, they are going to, traditionally speaking, they are going to have a family and they are going to take care of that family using that land. The need of the woman in that sense is not seen as big as that of a man. but not because of cultural taboos. But I think it is fairly logical when you examine it deeply without applying these affirmative action theories.
Because ideally, if we are all daughters and sons of this man, all of us should get a fair share of this land. Why should they give me a small fraction?
Because you're going to get somewhere. For example, when my father died, I was given land by the administrators of my father's estate. And as I speak now, my daughters have been married off into other clans, somewhere else. But my son, he's married, but well, he's of my clan. He's supposed, traditionally, he should be settled, near me, maybe. The girls are going to get married into another clan. They can come from Masaka and they go to, actually my daughters never got married in Masaka. They are far off places. So, I could give them some land, but then consider this, where they went, they may be given land. That's what I was talking about, them receiving land from two ends, which doesn't apply to the son. I think that is the reason why that was done that way. But not because women cannot own land. That is not the way I know it in Buganda. But they always tended to be given less. Women activists don't like it. They always argue that it's discriminatory. But I've tried to justify why that's how it's done.
So what happens in the event this daughter of yours doesn't get married? Because we know out there are very many single women, the statistics have shown. What if she doesn't get married? So what happens?
What I've experienced as a lawyer, because you get involved in people's affairs when you're a lawyer, especially to do with property, and you draft wills, you listen to testators, the people who make the wills, you listen to them, and I noticed that fathers in many situations would be fair. If a father has a daughter who, for example, didn't get married and she needs economic support from the father, they would consider that and they would give them probably bigger than they would have given them if the girls were married into some other families. I've seen it not once, not twice, not thrice. But I've also seen testators. Testators are the people who make wills. Most of the time they are men, because they're the ones with property, who hold on to tradition strictly, and some may not even give their daughters any land at all, saying this is a girl. It is not restricted to land even. It goes to other areas. There are certain fathers who wouldn't educate their daughters. And the argument was that, why are you wasting money? Why are you wasting money on girls who are going to get married into other families? My father, my elder siblings were all girls, and my father struggled to educate them. And his peers were laughing at him, because every beginning of time he had these challenges, because he'd got so many of my siblings and so many relatives who he had to cater for, and most of them were girls. I think to a ratio of about 80 to 20%. 80 girls and 20 boys, maybe even less than 20. And his peers will never understand why he was struggling educating girls. But my father was a teacher, and I think he knew the value of education, even educating the girl child. So he took them to school, all of them. So this wasn't restricted to land alone. That's what I was trying to explain. And many people didn't take their girls to school back in the day. Even today, we still urge fathers to give equal opportunity to girls and boys when they are taking them to school. But as far as land is concerned, that was, I think, the logic behind it.
Washtiwa, let me take you back to the issue of inheritance. Like you've clearly mentioned, you've inherited land from your father. I should say I've also inherited land from my father. My father recently passed on. But maybe you can clarify on this particular issue, because sometime back, when the former Prime Minister here in Uganda bequeathed land to his daughter, there was a lot of hullabaloo, especially from officials within Uganda, saying, how can a daughter, inherit, property of a man or even become a heiress to someone's empire?
Well, in Buganda, following the clan system is a patriarchal system. We take after our father's clans. And when it comes to inheritance, like, how much wealth can you take from your father? I've been trying to explain why girls were given less than the boys. But there is no cultural taboo that prohibits a man from giving land to his daughters. What is culturally a taboo is to appoint your daughter to be your customary heiress when you were married. When you were man. Because in Buganda we have got the succession processes. When a woman dies, she picks a woman of her clan, normally her brother's daughters, because her brother's daughters are going to be of her clan. And then they succeed her. A woman, customarily, the heiress is a woman to a woman. And then a man, the customary heir of a man is a man. Much of the noise, if I may use that word, regarding Apollo Nsibambi's will, regarded him appointing his daughter, one of his daughters, his customary heiress. But as far as giving them land, I don't see any problem there, even from a cultural perspective. But he had to pick, because I don't think Apollo Nsibambi had a son. I think all his children were girls. And I think he could have bequeathed all his property to his daughters. I don't think there is a cultural prohibition to that. But except if there was ancestral burial grounds which he could have demarcated off. And then he should have picked either his young brother or his nephew from one of his brothers as a customary heir. But then he could give his land to his daughters.
But let me pick your legal mind actually on this, also as a traditional cultural leader here. The assumption, what I understand by being a cultural heir or a cultural heiress, it comes with responsibilities of you being able to manage and take control of assets or even property that have been left behind.
Not necessarily. Because there is what we call a customary heir and a legal heir. A customary heir is the one who assumes responsibility as far as the family is concerned. For example, you're going to go into events like last funeral rites.
But a woman can also do that.
It's different because, like I told you, it's a patriarchal clan system.
Okay.
And Nsibambi was of the Fumbe clan. And I don't know if they had any leadership role within the clan. And then you are going to go into these clan things. And then the girl, his daughters, some of them are actually married. Normally.
So they may not fulfill the cultural.
Yes. It comes with those challenges. The girl is married into another clan. And they tend to move more with the husband in that sense. So you can have a customary heir who succeeds you for cultural and customary purposes. And then you have got a legal heir who takes care of your assets and properties and all, wealth and all those things. That's perfectly okay. That's perfectly okay. But prejudices cannot be eliminated in a year or two. To a very large extent, this world belongs to us, the men. Not only here in Africa.
The women are running the world, HTU.
The women are running the world, but they're running it on behalf of men, by and large. Well, that's why a liberated woman like Hillary Rodham, Hillary Rodham has to adopt the name of her husband, Clinton. Why is it still the practice, even in the developed world? this is a debate that can go on for a very long time, but you'll find that even in a developed country like the US, they've never had a woman president.
They were near to.
They were near to. I thought Hillary would have made a very good president, or even Kamala Harris. But they didn't elect them. And I think one of the reasons is because they're women. You can see the prejudices are still running high. Of course, the UK has had 3 prime ministers, female prime ministers, which must please the feminists or other people interested in women emancipation and all these things.
So we're speaking about still women. What does culture, maybe here in the Buganda Kingdom now, state for cases where a husband passes on and this woman is a widow? Because we have seen cases where women are being disinherited, and also a time of divorce. What does culture state when it comes to, property and assets?
Usually, from a purely cultural standpoint,
yes,
the property in the house, in the homestead, belong to the man, the husband. The land, the house sitting on the land, and the different household items belong to the man from a pure cultural perspective. Because the woman was married into this clan, she came from another clan. For example, my mother is of the Ngabi clan, and she came and married into a Mutima clan. And the land where my father built the house belonged to his father, my grandfather of the Mutima clan. And all the land that my grandfather gave to my father, was for my grandfather. So from a strictly cultural standpoint, all the land belonged to my father. Although my father gave a piece of his land to my mother, she had her own coffee. My father had reasonable acreages of coffee. But my mother also had her own, in her own right. In her own right. She had her own coffee garden, coffee shamba.
Given to her by her husband?
Given to her by my father. And when she would harvest the coffee and sell it, that money belongs to my mother. I don't know whether in their bedroom they discussed what she did with the money. I have no idea whatsoever. But what I remember vividly, when my mother would sell her coffee, she would give some of us. If you pick the coffee, or if you were involved at all in the process, especially the post-harvest processes.
So culturally, is that the norm? Because your father could have been different from other men.
And these days, because we've got this Mwantalimba campaign, we are urging the husbands in Buganda to give their wives their own gardens in their own right, because that's an incentive for the wife in the home to keep a keen and interested eye even on the rest of the coffee for the husband. If she's involved in the coffee farming chain just as any other person, I don't know that she does it with as much care and attention as would happen when she has her own garden. I remember vividly, my mother would be very, very tough on the way the coffee from my father's gardens was being handled. I think because she had her own garden where she would get her own, harvest and get her own money. I think it's a very good incentive. And I'm not aware of any other husband in our village who did that apart from my father. But these are things we need to address and show the men the advantages they would reap if, for example, they gave their wives their own gardens. Because normally I go to these villages every so often for coffee.
So it's like a new practice the kingdom is trying to adopt.
Yes.
Progress.
I give this message myself and my colleagues, the ministers and other people here in the kingdom. They urge the husbands, if you have got, let's say, got 10 acres of coffee, portion of 2 and tell your wife that is yours.
So even in case when he's long gone, she will retain.
It would be best if she was included in his will. And if, in my case, my next of kin is my wife. That's what it is. And my children can take some of my properties, but my wife must definitely take probably the bigger portion, as it were. Because, you know why? Because these days, you invest in your children by educating them and by grooming them properly, whatever that may mean to different people. But you groom them properly, you educate them, then you've given them their inheritance. They should go and struggle and build their own wealth. Then the rest should belong to my wife. But I also hope that if when she dies, she gives it back to her children. You understand? I think that would be the fair thing to do. I give her my wealth, and then she gives it to her children, our children. I think that would be the fair thing. I wouldn't give my wealth to my children and I leave my wife bare. I definitely wouldn't do that, simply because she's a woman.
So is that the cultural standpoint of the kingdom, or that is you as an individual?
I speak this from a purely personal standpoint.
Okay.
But I would encourage people.
So culturally, that is not well defined in the Buganda Kingdom.
What I know from a cultural standpoint, nothing prohibits any man from giving his wife his property.
Okay.
Except if this property we are talking about is clan property. It can cause a lot of conflicts. For example, if you've got 100 acres of land and there is a portion of it which is burial grounds, I think it would be wise to demarcate that off as you bequeath the balance of the land to your wife. Because the family, the wider family, the clan will never understand it where in a situation where burial ground for Mutima members is being owned by a Mbogo clan member. It would cause a lot of problems.
Let's look at now where culture, the standpoint of the Buganda Kingdom culturally when it comes to cases of divorce. We have seen incidences where if a woman gets to get divorced and she has no children, perhaps she walks away out of this marriage with totally nothing, because they say, like you've mentioned, usually if you bequeath land to your wife, then the wife should be able to pass it on to the children. That way it remains for that clan or that particular...
That's what one would hope for.
So what happens culturally when divorce happens? You
see, no, in the past when divorce occurred, even before the legal regimes we follow were introduced, the woman would return back to her home. When they divorce, she would go back to her father's house. That's what used to happen. But then there were very few divorces, by the way, before we assumed Christianity and common law. All the law that we follow today, which was introduced recently by the British. The cases of divorce were very, very few. Maybe because women those days were more tolerant to abuse, perhaps, or maybe because the blame was always put on the woman, on the wife.
For a failed marriage.
For a failed marriage in most of the African communities. The woman was supposed to endure all the abuses. There are communities even today, and I visited them, I'm not going to mention them because I don't want to stir up any controversies, where it is the women who work. The women go and work in the fields. Then they even build the houses. These houses built out of natural materials. They build the houses. And then when it comes to harvest time, the man sells the yields, sells the crops that the women grew. And then he goes to drink. In some of these communities, men start drinking at 10 in the morning till late in the night. There are certain communities that do that in Uganda even today. And a woman is expected to be in that marriage till she grows old. And when she grows old, the man marries a young bride. because the old wife, of course she's old now, you understand, she can't probably indulge in these carnal issues anymore. And the cycle continues. I think these are things which need to be changed. So in Buganda, the divorce cases were not many before the introduction of foreign systems. So, and where it happened, the woman would return with nothing to her home, her father. And the divorced woman was actually not welcome in the home of her father, because that family would be looked at as not being able to groom their daughters properly, so much so that they even have to run away from their husbands' houses. So I don't think there are precedents. But what I know, if she went back to her father's house, she would go back with nothing. Today, the law tells the couple to share the wealth in proportion to the contributions made by both. If your contribution was 10%, they give you 10% of the man's properties. I'm aware of certain divorce cases where property has been split between them, and others where small portions have been given. And in that case, well, if the woman can prove her contribution to the wealth, then she takes that portion.
Okay. When we're starting this podcast, as we come to the end of this podcast, you mentioned how land to you as an individual, land to the Baganda and even the Buganda is more like Obutaka, is more like home. But currently, land has been highly commodized. Should I say, it has become more of a marketable asset. And we've seen very many people sell off what I should say, as the Buganda Kingdom holds so dear, call it home. But people have sold it away, and many have been rendered homeless. Do you feel, in a way, this has diverted from the traditions of Buganda? Because, I mean, look at the economy we're living in. I mean, people are selling off land, the land that you hold so dear, the land that we call home. Has it diverted from the way...
You know, the pressures on land have eroded even some of the traditional practices, the cultural norms. Even the original ancestral homes of Butaka have been sold to third parties. The reason, I think, is that we are changing. Communities, cultures evolve all the time. And the need for land, you know, everyone needs a piece of land to settle on, or to grow food, or to herd animals. And as the population grows, and as globalization takes over, these forces exert themselves on the land holding systems. I think it's inevitable. What is important is to ensure that we follow the law. It might have its gaps or faults here and there, but that's the best we have. You should have strict application of the law.
So
and if a woman wants to assert any rights over land, the law should aid her. The law should support her. But you see, the administration of justice in Uganda has waned greatly. The rule of law has waned greatly. Can the police help a woman whose rights over land are being violated? Can the courts protect her? Can the law itself protect the woman? I think we can say lots of things, but at the end of the day, it's the rule of law that can be relied on to protect people's rights, even women's rights over land. If you worked hard with your husband and you bought a piece of land, and then you've got proof that you've contributed to the money that bought this piece of land with your husband. The law should protect you. Not merely because you're a woman, but because there is evidence that you contributed money that enabled you and your husband to buy this land. But can the courts do that in Uganda today effectively is the big question. Can the police carry out investigations where a woman feels her rights over land have been violated? She should go to the police. For example, if there is criminal trespass. Criminal trespass is where you go and you claim my land. You come over and you probably demarcate it off and all these things, and you walk over it, as it were. Can the police do investigations for a woman? And can the police gather the evidence and present it before court? And can the court adjudicate over this matter? But what about the law in Parliament? What does the law say in Parliament regarding women's rights over land? It's a very broad subject, which I don't think should be restricted to a cultural perspective. But if the lawmakers were doing a good job and they involve us, they involve the kingdoms, they involve the chiefdoms, they involve the other cultural unions. What do these people say regarding, I've just told you, I don't know of any cultural prohibition that bars a woman from holding land in the Kingdom of Buganda, except for the other areas I talked about, the designated clan lands. Other land women can hold it. But has the law taken notice of this? Because that's what the law should do. Can our lawmakers ensure that women are protected?
And that's where Shtiwa takes me as we conclude how land is managed. We have the Buganda Land Board, and we also have the central government that actually gets to control land. How is the relationship like between the Buganda Land Board and the central government?
The only role of Buganda Land Board is administrative. Buganda Land Board doesn't issue certificates of title. Certificates of title are issued by the Registrar of Titles. That's the Ministry of Lands in the central government. And incidentally, of all the land in Buganda, Buganda is about 18,000 square miles. The Kingdom of Buganda owns about 5% only. The rest is in the hands of the central government. I don't know whether people know this. About 90% of all land in Buganda is in the hands of the central government. So when you hear politicians talking about Buganda Land Board and the Kabaka owning land, they're just trying to cause trouble because they know the truth. And I've cited 6 reasons regarding land, even when it comes to women's rights. The inefficiency in the police force, the inefficiency in the police, the inefficiency in the courts, there is population explosion, there is land running out of nutrients because of overuse. In areas like Masaka, where I come from, the population density is high. And then there is political interference. Even where the police and the courts work, many times the politicians poke their noses. You know, we've had many times RDCs defying court orders. All these are problems that cause problems to women, even further. So, the Buganda Land Board only manages the land that is owned by the Kingdom of Buganda. And that is only 5% of all land in Buganda. People should be aware of this. And the Buganda Land Board only prepares. You go and you pay duties to them, they come and survey your land. They survey land which belongs to the Kingdom of Buganda. And then everything is taken to the land office. The national land offices, Wakiso, Mukono, Masaka, and Mitiana, and everywhere. That's how it is. But we work with them actually very well. Buganda Land Board works with the national registries very well. It's only the politicians who try to confuse the public. They cause confusion, and it's deliberate. They're just trying to destabilize us.
Owek, your last remarks and recommendations, perhaps, as we strive to ensure that the women of this country can enjoy their full band of rights, but we also alive to the fact that we have cultural norms and practices that govern us as a people and that also govern land, and how can they also get to, be part of these various land management governance institutions in this country?
Well, I personally think that if the country is going to experience social and economic transformation, women must necessarily be part of the agenda. They must intentionally be part of the agenda. And women's economic rights must be protected and even promoted. So women's rights over land should also be protected, because women are a crucial factor in the economic activities of the country. And like I said at the beginning, 70% of the population are staying in the villages, and it's an agrarian economy, and the women are playing a very crucial role. If they owned the land in their own right, not just because they are somebody's wife, I think the incentive for them to work the land would even be bigger, and that would spur the economy. That's the way I look at it. And cultural practices which hinder women from owning land, well, should be modified gradually. I think it is engagement that can work. Most people I know most men I know want their mothers, their daughters, their sisters to be stable where they are. I haven't come across a single man who is going to support a situation where his sister is being evicted from her land, or his mother, which means we need to engage with the men and show them the need to enforce women's rights over land. And where culture conflicts with the law as we know it, because under the law, a man or a woman can own land, but culture may be a prohibition. We need to engage with the men, and we see how women can derive benefits from land. I think it's about engagement and a clear understanding of the situation and the dynamics, be they social, be they cultural, be they economic. That's how I look at it.
Thank you so much, Owek Charles Peter Mayiga, on this particular episode of Her Land O'Clock podcast, which has been brought to you by the Stand for Her Land campaign. I've been hosting the Katikiro, or Prime Minister of Buganda Kingdom. Owek Charles Peter Mayiga has been sharing with us some of the culturally acceptable norms and practices in the Buganda Kingdom in regards to use, control, ownership, inheritance, divorce, when it comes to land management here in Buganda Kingdom. We can only hope that his insights can act as a guiding mirror to you people out there, to help you identify some of these harmful and discriminatory norms that he has talked about, and how can we be able to transform from them and make this place a better place for both the women and even the men of this country. Until next time, my name is Rita Kemgisa. Bye-bye.